Dr. Dana Tassone with participants in the course HFT6296, a capstone course in hospitality tourism management, talking about Chapter 7. You will notice, I guess, from the notes for the rest of the chapters that the author provides us with very practical information for the implementation of strategic plans. Now, of course, our job is not to actually implement a plan. Our job is to implement an evaluation and revisions for existing plans so that organizations can benefit from our analysis. And this chapter begins with strategy implementation. You remember, objectives are targets for performance. They're driven from the mission. Strategies are action steps to accomplish the objectives. And we would list the strategic strategies in action steps, specific action steps, and we would deploy resources, people, and systems to accomplish the strategy. And each strategy will, when it's accomplished, will then accomplish the objectives. The evidence you're looking for, obviously, is, what are their objectives and what are their strategies, and do they, based on the evidence, commit the resources, the people, and the systems to accomplish those. And this evidence, in some cases, when you finally get to the end of your audits, the evidence about the specific questions that are being asked may not be evident to you in all realms. And sometimes one must speculate based on the prior evidence, the data gathering process, whether something is true or not. And it's interesting because we talked about organizational cultures, and organizational cultures are derived from the mission for the organization, whether it be the stated mission or the operating mission. It's the behavioral norms that are established through that, the values, attitudes, and beliefs. And so when we talk about large corporations, we talk about their mission in terms of catchphrases. For instance, when we talk about Coke, the Coke company, Coca-Cola, their mission, their culture is all about being number one. And the number two provider of colas is PepsiCo, and their catchphrase for their culture is win at any cost. And there was a time, back a little ways, where this culture got them into trouble. And so, it's interesting to note that the culture of an organization in and of itself should not be judged. We should take a non-judgmental view of it. The only judgment we make is whether or not it's worded appropriately and whether or not it's possible for every employee to memorize it. But we should recognize when we identify the mission for an organization, and if you can turn that into a catchphrase, or if you pick up on the catchphrases that are out there, can that mission potentially bite them down the road? So if you have a win at any cost type of culture, the managers, the decision makers, could actually jeopardize the cost, jeopardize the organization by following those values and attitudes. And this was the case with PepsiCo a while back. You know that for a long time they were involved, talk about diversification, they were involved heavily in the retail food service industry, and that almost caused their demise. So, who implements the plan? Well, I think we talked about management by objectives, MBO, and we talked about participative strategic planning and strategic execution. And so the simple answer, and not the answer in many organizations, but the simple answer is that the implementation should be top down and bottom up. That's what MBO is all about. MBO is the objectives of an organization being set, being shared with the next level down. The next level down makes their objectives to feed those objectives. and the next level, the level up, reviews those objectives. They work on them together and they refine them, and then the process continues all the way down to every level of the organizational structure. It's a very daunting task. I probably told you it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of commitment, but it is proven, at least in my observation, it's proven that individuals in these types of organizations are completely bought into what the organization is about and will take ownership of the strategic plan and make it work. And I probably shared this with you or didn't share it with you. You know, the whole goal of implementation of anything is to work smarter, not harder. When we talked about productivity, and it's going to be listed later on here, we talk about productivity. That's what productivity is all about. That's how you enhance productivity, is finding ways for people to work smarter, not harder. A lot of organizations, of course, don't understand this concept. And then we know, you know the model. The model is, objectives, strategies, and then policies and programs and procedures and standards and actually standards and then procedures. Well, this chapter really is following the same flowchart, if you will. There's a concept called institutionalization. And institutionalization means that something, remember I told you about stated missions versus operating missions. The stated mission is not institutionalized. Instead, the unwritten operations mission is institutionalized. So what does institutionalization mean? It means that a concept or an existing entity, existing thing, becomes a way of life in the organization. So when you create a plan, and the evidence you're looking for is, does the evidence suggest that the organization that I'm auditing, does the evidence suggest that they've actually been able to institutionalize what they said their plan is all about? And a lot of organizations don't realize this, and they can't figure out why their plan doesn't work. And it's because they aren't living the plan. How do you live the plan? It's top down. Every level of the organization, every manager has to walk that talk, and it has to become a way of life, and it has to feed into performance appraisal systems, it has to feed into hiring systems, it has to feed into promotional systems, it has to feed into training systems. All those things reinforce the institutionalization of the mission, which is really the purpose, as you know, of a strategic plan, is to make that mission happen, to become a mission-driven organization. Now, what's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen is that things won't always go according to plan. And so what an organization needs are contingency plans. You probably won't see this in your evidence, but a contingency plan kicks into place when something doesn't happen. I think I told you about missed due dates by sharing objectives with the guys in my office, and you miss a due date. Well, you pull out a contingency plan and you revise that particular objective and the activity points to get to that. Organizational structure, I probably told you that people are quick to change the structure of an organization. This is not sound advice. A structure is based on organizational design, which is a science. And when consultants go into an organization, they tend to shift the culture because it's visible. It's on a chart and they can see it. That's a last-ditch effort for a retrenchment strategy, actually. So this is not to say that organizations, well, you know this from the past few years, organizations have participated in reorganization. And reorganization is an activity that shakes up the entire company. And when that happens, it shifts the organizational structure. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it depends on the reason for the reorganization. And history tells us that many reorgs were implemented for selfish reasons, and they negatively impacted a lot of people, and they really weren't necessary. Today's economy, perhaps, may suggest or has suggested reorganizations at various levels. there's something called, and this is based on systems theory. I think I touched on that with you. I know I drill it into the undergrad course, capstone course. There's a structure out there. I told you about the hybrid structure, and then there was a structure out there based on systems theory called the network structure. That's simply a hybrid of the matrix structure. Network structure, I don't know what I just said. Network structure is simply a hybrid of the matrix structure, which I explained to you. The network structure, though, could, in a network structure, the organization is a hub, and there are spokes of various services. And there was a trend to outsource support systems, staff services such as human resources and accounting and payroll and those types of things. This will probably continue. You all know of the customer service entities that have been outsourced to India and other countries. For what? To rethink, or to save money. Same is true of programmers. I think I mentioned that to you already. Here's the thing with re-engineering. Re-engineering cannot be haphazard. It must require rethinking, restructuring, and revitalizing the organization. If those three things don't happen, don't reorg. That's a good rule of thumb. And you know most reorgs are usually reactive, not proactive. They're in response to shareholder concerns. And so that's really it for that particular chapter, lecture notes, and we're probably out of time. So I will see you in the next clip.